Hi, and welcome to today's webinar. I'd like to start by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, traditional owners of the country that we meet on today, and acknowledge their continuing connection to land, waters and community. And we pay our respects to their people, culture, elders past, present and emerging. Well, thank you for coming along today to the Customised Employment Quality Assurance Framework. To give you some background to it, the framework functions as the operational architecture that supports and sustains the equilibrium systems model of employment. The ESME, as we call it, defines the interacting components and relationships that underpin sustainable employment outcomes, whereas the Quality Assurance Framework ensures these relationships are upheld through structured and evidence-based quality practice. So in that sense, the Quality Assurance Framework sits behind the equilibrium systems model of employment, and I'll go a little bit deeper into the ESME model a little bit later on. So just to give you some bit more detail into the relationship of those particular elements. ESME, its key elements are the individual, practitioner, staff, employers, organisation, systems, government, and family or support network. And the ESME is the systems engine that ensures that integrity, sequencing and integration of all customised employment practices, tools and outcome measures. It unifies the framework through the shared values of inclusion, self-determination, family partnerships and sustainable outcomes. Quality Assurance Framework, of course, is built around the individual consultant, the organisation and the person receiving the services or the participant, and its action through those three elements of training, organisation and the reflexive practice feedback from the participant. So the framework is designed to establish and uphold the standards of practice in customised employment services, particularly in Australia with our evolving employment systems. So onto the Customised Employment Quality Assurance Framework. So the purpose of the framework is to provide a structured and evidence-informed system for assessing, assuring and enhancing the quality of customised framework practice, customised employment practice across service providers, practitioners and the systems. It's designed to ensure the implementation of CE with fidelity, participant focused outcomes, and particularly in the context of, in Australia, the NDIS, DES and other open employment systems. It's really important to have a quality assurance framework, particularly around customised employment, because in Australia today, and it's common probably in other parts of the world as well, is that every service provider says they deliver customised employment. But the reality is that very few actually have invested in both the training, the systems, and the feedback loops that ensure that customised employment is actually delivered with fidelity to the evidence base. For most service providers that say they do it, really what they're talking about is just system or service customisation rather than customised employment per se. And I think one of the benefits of having a framework is that, for funding bodies like the NDIS, if they're giving money to people to pursue employment and they say they're getting customised employment, well, the government needs a framework or a measure that they can say, yes, are you getting customised employment? And this is what it should look like. And if you're not getting that, well, clearly you're not getting customised employment and we need to have a chat, okay, particularly with the service provider. So it's about, we've seen this same issue happen with various other things like person-centred practices, etc., active support, etc., and so on, where everybody's adopted the name, but not the actual structure and the practices and the evidence. We don't want this to become just a simple buzzword and diluted by people who just are hanging out a shingle. So, what are the core principles behind the Customised Employment Quality Assurance Framework? Well, clearly, fidelity to the customised employment principles. It ensures an alignment with internationally recognised CE practices, particularly those endorsed by CEQAF, APSI, and that we're talking about the competencies, the published competencies that have existed for some time now. It aligns with frameworks like the CEQAF tool, which is the Customised Employment Organisational Fidelity and Elevating Capacity tool. That's a long description, which we'll talk about a little bit further on. It safeguards the methodology, which includes discovery, job development, and systematic instruction. It promotes continuous improvement. It encourages services to reflect on and improve their practice. As we always say, that customised employment isn't we've got it and that's it. No, it's an evolving process that needs to continue to evolve to meet the requirements of the people you're supporting, the policies and practices, or rather policies and legislation that exist, the funding methodologies that exist. They all change. They all evolve. So consequently, so should customised employment. So continuous improvement is a significant aspect of this. It supports capability development. We put silver, gold, platinum levels in there because people want that sort of stuff. That's what it is. But it supports staff training, organisational system maturity, and the inclusion of the participant voice. And we'll talk a bit more about the participant voice a little later on. But it provides a roadmap from emerging to best practice. It enables transparent evaluation and accreditation, structured self-assessment, audit tools, evidence-based policies, etc., that can demonstrate a commitment to quality employment support and readiness, whether for accommodation, accreditation, or commissioning under the NDIS and other frameworks. It ensures participant-centred outcomes. At the core, it's about delivering real sustainable employment for people with disability and ensuring those supports are individualised. They listen to the participant voice and they're directed towards open employment, which is meaningful and has meaningful inclusion, but importantly, it's meaningful to the individual. These are really key ingredients. So they're the core principles outlined. So the domains, the consultant, the organisation, and the participant. So let's have a look at these, in a bit more detail. So, ACA training. We have the only ACA accredited customised employment training program in Australia. And it's designed to equip professionals with the skills, knowledge necessary to support individuals with disabilities. Why ACA? Well, because there are published competencies and it's globally recognised standard. It's the globally recognised standard for customised employment training. We've spent probably the better part of a decade and a bucket load of money trying to convince the government to develop a specific training program for customised employment and disability, and they kept coming back and rejecting it and saying, what, if someone wants to deliver disability employment in Australia, they can just go and do the certificate 3 or 4 in disability, and that'll teach them all they need to know about disability, and they can apply that to employment. Well, that's rubbish, a complete and utter nonsense, because it denies the fact that people delivering disability employment need quite specific information. They need quite specific skills, competencies, knowledge. It denies the fact that this is a professional service. You don't deliver a professional service based on a certificate free. That's just a nonsense. If you're going to build a program, then what we've done is we ensure it's designed to meet a standard, and of course it's independently evaluated and audited and certified. And of course what we've done is ours has been written to ensure that the Australian legislation, policy and funding requirements are addressed. Now what we did of course was that ACA said we could just simply rewrite our existing program, but we made the decision to write a whole new program. And it's important that people understand where disability employment comes from, and of course also understand what's going on in other countries. So there is in our program a comparative study of the legislation, etc. in Australia and the legislation, policy, funding, etc. that happens in America. So it's good that you could actually use this course in America because it does show you those fundamental differences. And of course it's a base requirement for anybody delivering customised employment and for organisations that want to deliver customised employment. I mean, let's face it, if you want a service, you want to know the person's been trained and actually has the most up-to-date knowledge and skills. Otherwise, what are you paying for? So, the effect tool itself, or the CEQAF tool itself and its origins, and it's inspired by the effect tool, which was developed through the Employment First Missouri initiative. It was driven by my good friend Dwayne Schmart when he was the Director of Developmental Disabilities for Missouri, and of course co-done with the University of Missouri as Institute for Human Development. Now, that tool is a great base, and we were shown that tool a year ago now by Dwayne and David Hoff from UMass's Institute for Community Inclusion. And the interesting part of it, when we looked at it, and I was sitting with my good friend June Alexander at the time, we kind of looked at it and went, "Oh, we know what we could do with this." So we had long discussions with Dwayne and David and about what we wanted to do and how it could be adapted. And they said, "You know what, go for your life. Adapt it to what you've done." So that's kind of the origins of where it came from. It came out of existing research that was going on and is still going on in Missouri. So, but are they different? Yes, but they're complementary. The effect tool that is the origins of the current tool we have, the CEQAF tool, is that it was designed for a whole of organisation benchmark against the US Employment First principles and the broader disability employment practice, which is great for state policy oversight and multi-service reviews. The CEQAF tool is purely focused on fidelity assurance and capacity elevation for service providers delivering customised employment. And that's where it differs, in that we've got a more narrower focus on customised employment. The effect tool is a more broader one that aligns to the Employment First initiatives in the state. So that's where it's different. But of course they're complementary, because you could quite easily take the CEQAF tool and use it for customised employment in the States. So, onwards. Okay, so let's talk about CEQAF. Okay, the CEQAF tool itself has 9 domains. As you can see there: values and culture, communication, skills and competencies, active person-centered driven service delivery, holistic approach, retention and advancement, ongoing staff development goals and measurements, and the allocation of resources. So they're the domains, and they're no different to the effect tool domains in that sense. And of course there are 3 levels. They have established levels, same 3 levels in the effect tool and the co-effect tool. We've modified those to reflect customised employment practice. So the first level, which is emerging customised employment model agency. Second one, established practice. And the third, of course, is reflective and participant-led practice. And of course, these are not endpoints, because change is constant. So it's important to recognise that just because you've reached a level doesn't mean that's it. You set and forget. No, you've got to still keep working at this to make sure that you are delivering a service that reflects the community and legislative requirements. So let's dig a bit deeper. So, emerging customised employment agency. This is where you would expect to find most organisations where staff are doing training or have completed training. So they've completed their accredited customised employment training, CEQAF training, and that builds the foundational competencies that are required to establish the core elements of customised employment, including discovery, post-placement support, job development, based on participant strengths and interests. So that's a reasonable base, and you'd probably find that in Australia most organisations haven't undertaken any form of serious training. Consequently, they're kind of not even at that emerging level. They're really hanging out a shingle to say we do it without any real anything backing it up. So the second level, of course, is the organisation, and we know from 2 decades of work in the field in Australia, and certainly it's reflected overseas, is that we know customised employment will fail inside an organisation if all they do is train their staff. That's not enough. If you don't put in place the systems, policies and services that support your staff to do the job and to do it with fidelity to the evidence, then it won't work. It will fail, because eventually what happens is the staff don't have the support they need, so they go back to doing what they used to do, and then you wake up one day and go, what happened to our customised employment program? Well, you killed it. It's as simple as that, because you didn't support it properly. Now, the CEQAF audit tool is a way for organisations to understand what they need to put in place in terms of processes, in terms of policies, in terms of supports, so that they can actually use customised employment that reflect the principles and the evidence for customised employment. And that's really important. And we do a lot of work in that area with organisations, and I'm actually at the moment I'm doing a project where we're developing an open employment program inside an organisation from scratch. So we're doing all the policy work, everything from scratch. So that's a very good exercise that we're doing at the moment. It's one of a number. The last level, of course, which is the reflective and participant-led practice, and that's the highest quality, because you know what, that reflects that the organisation not only is meeting the system level requirements, but it's also using participant feedback to drive continuous improvement. You know, one of the reasons that we started to look at this, because we felt that one of the things that's missing out of almost all employment services is the voice of the participant. Where are they? You know, the participant should drive service delivery. The participant drives continuous improvement, because at the end of the day, we're delivering a service to a person. And if that person isn't getting what they've signed up for, what they expect, then what are we delivering? So if we're not listening to the individual, we're not really having real co-design, we're not hearing the voice, and we're not being particularly inclusive. So that's a really important one. So what does the process look like? Well, to implement the process itself, there's 27 evaluation questions, and that looks at the evidence, whether it be interviews, document reviews, policies and procedures, individual records, even talking to people. And they're assessed against the measure, and that can be done externally, and it is done externally. But what we do is we provide the actual audit tool to the organisation so they can prepare, so they can go and look and see what they've got. You know, if they don't have the tools, they can actually develop them, you know, because at the end of the day, this is about improving the organisation's capacity to deliver customised employment. If they have them, great, we'll audit them. If they haven't got them, we'll work with them. We've developed a significant range of resources, from sample policies to templates, etc., to help organisations put in place customised employment processes, policies and procedures that respect the evidence base for what we're trying to achieve. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff goes on in the background to allow that to happen, but it's a good starting point for an organisation that if they're not sure if they're doing it properly and what they've got to put in place, they can do an evaluation and go, okay, oh, these are things we need. Okay, we need help to do that. That's great, we'll do that. Or they might have all that stuff and go, right, we're ready, let's go. And we can help them, because at the end of the day, what does it do? It improves the capacity of the organisation to deliver the program, customised employment, with fidelity to the evidence that also respects the voice of the individual that we're delivering the support to. Really important. Okay, so this is the third leg of the assurance process, and that is we developed a program called the Discovery Experience Reflection Scale, and it's a client-centered evaluation tool designed to assess and reflect the participant's experience. And that's really key, because you know, at the end of the day, you know, we've got a discovery fidelity scale, and we've done a lot of work with the guys in the States to develop an Australian version of it, which I will say I'm remiss in not finishing writing that up. But the discovery fidelity scale is a retrospective look at how service is being delivered. Right. Whereas this is all about the client and their experience. But you know, at the end of the day, we can deliver discovery against the evidence base, and we can think that we're doing it with fidelity. But what is the client experiencing? You know, at the end of the day, the client's reality, the client's experience is their reality of discovery. And if it doesn't reflect what we think we're doing, then we need to know. We need to change. What have we missed? You know, because at the end of the day, if we're person-centered, the client is driving this. So we need to actually hear the client's voice loudly. So we've developed the Discovery Experience Reflection Scale. It's undergoing field validation trials at the moment. Later this year, we'll move to a full-blown ethics-approved peer evaluation of the particular scale itself. So we'll have a look at that again in a little bit more detail. So here's the detail. So what is it? It captures the participant voice. It supports quality assurance. It enables continuous improvement. It validates individualised practice, and it facilitates ethical practice. And you can see the little faces there. That's how we want people to score it. We make this as simple as possible so that everybody can access the document and respond, right? Have their voice heard. Okay, so The key areas of reflection is we ask participants to rate and comment on their experiences across things such as, did you feel listened to? Did you understand what was happening? Did you feel safe and comfortable during the observations? Were you able to share your ideas and preferences? And could you see the connection between your interests and the jobs that were being developed? You know, at the end of the day, discovery is about taking someone's interest and developing vocational themes to allow us to have a meaningful, focused job development that matches up to where the client wants to go. It's not about us going, hey, we've got a whole bunch of jobs and which one would you like? No, it's about the client. And this allows the client to reflect and go, yeah, you know, they listen. And the things that you found me matched up to my interests. And if something matches up to the client's interest, that we're talking in employment here, then it's going to be more meaningful. And that's what we're trying to achieve. Employment that's meaningful to the client. So, its role within the quality framework, well, it's a client-informed fidelity measure that helps elevate the service beyond procedural compliance to genuine person-centered impact. In short, as it says, it's about measuring how discovery felt to the person whose life and future it directly impacts. It's an essential ethical step towards high-quality, customised employment practice. And isn't that what we're trying to achieve? So, implementing the framework involves a structured tiered process that integrates fidelity to customised employment, organisational capacity building, participant voice and continuous improvement. And its implementation is designed to be scalable, developmental and aligned to existing service delivery models such as the NDIS or DARES. And I think it's important to recognise that discovery is a capacity building tool. It's not simply about a job, it's about building a person's capacity to exist in a workplace. You know, we have a small employment service that sits behind our research and training programs, and it works with clients that have significantly, a number of them have mental health issues, and they can be quite simple, through to simple anxiety or situational anxiety, all the way up to schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. But what we find is that almost every client that we work with has some type of anxiety around a workplace. You know, so what we're trying to do, obviously, by doing a person-centered, you know, capacity building program with the client, is build their capacity to exist in a workplace. You know, and that's really important. I mean, this is probably one of the reasons why disability employment practice fails, is that we actually don't think about the client and whether they can actually exist in that workplace, you know, because it's not just about a job. This is the person's life. And how do they feel about the things they're going to? I mean, what does work feel like for them? Is it ugly? Is it somewhere you don't want to go? You know, these are things we need to recognise. This is capacity building. So, we developed a range of tools, and clearly with the CEQAF training, our online program logs what the participants are doing, but it doesn't hurt to have an external log for other things you might be doing. We developed discovery and job development templates, the CEQAF tool, the DARES, of course, the Discovery Fidelity Scale, the Australian version. We've developed organisational policies. We have a sample policy kit for people that reflect the quality framework and the evidence for customised employment, post-placement support logs, participant employment portfolios. And of course, as part of the work that I did over a decade ago when I started my PhD, I developed an outcome measure which was published in 2023. And that outcome measure was based on something I've always held, which was we don't measure the right things. You know, so, you know, we talk about measuring whether someone got a job and whether they're still in there in, you know, 12, 26, 52 weeks, whatever. But what we should be measuring is what does the actual job do for someone? You know, I mean, no one likes a job where you get paid and nothing else happens. You know, the pay is great, but if the job's not doing something for you, the pay's not going to be enough. So I developed that particular outcome measure, and of course that's been peer reviewed and published. So, and of course we're using that at the moment, and we'll probably next year we'll probably find a space to start doing some real validity trials on that one. But again, there's so much to do, and so few of us doing it. So, What are the outcomes of the implementation of the quality assurance framework? Well, clear alignment to CEQAF APSI competencies, NDIS employment outcome principles, evidence of participant-led service delivery, improved practice fidelity, employment outcomes and staff competence, and a readiness for an organisation to deliver a quality service, whether it be accredited, and to actually move through the accreditation tiers if necessary, well, as necessary. So, before I finish, I just wanted to give you a little bit more about the ESME, the Equilibrium Systems Model of Employment. As I've said there, disability employment outcomes remain persistently uneven. You know, one of the things that when I sat down and started the research, and this research is an outcome of my PhD, and in actual fact, I actually jumped into this research, into the model full-time when I was at Cornell. It was designed to conceptualise the dynamics of how, by examining how stability or imbalance is produced across the 6 core actors: the individual, the family, employment practitioners, employers, service providers, and community governing systems. It's inspired by Bronfenbrenner's models, and of course it's embedded with chaos theory, which might sound odd, but if you understand chaos theory, it makes a lot of sense. Particularly in systems that have disequilibrium or equilibrium. So the model recognises that employment outcomes for people with disability or anyone with barriers to employment are not solely determined by individual capacity or systems and support, but by the dynamic equilibrium amongst the interacting actors. So that gives you a little bit more about the ESME model and what sits in front of. So, you know, I guess if you look at the work we're doing, we've got the systems model, then we've got the quality framework, and then of course we have the different elements that sit within the quality framework. It's a very large body of work that's going on behind, and it'll be published in various forms over the next couple of years, I'm sure. So that's the quality assurance framework. There's my details if you want to reach out and have a chat to me about it. But you know, at the end of the day, what we're trying to achieve is a quality framework so that individuals and government agencies can be assured that what they're getting, what they're funding, is customised employment with fidelity to the evidence base that also respects the individual and is delivered by trained staff. We're going to eliminate, and it might sound grandiose to say this, but we need to stop this idea that anybody can hang a shingle out because they want to make money out of the government or whatever, without actually putting in the work, getting the training, having the knowledge, having the systems, having the respect for the client. At the end of the day, if your staff aren't trained, then you're not really respecting the client, and you're certainly not respecting the systems as well. So that's it. That's the webinar in brief, I guess. And if you have any questions or otherwise, by all means, reach out to me. You can actually go to our main website, the CEQAF website, and look under quality. There's a tab for quality framework, which has more details about the quality framework there. So there we are. By all means, reach out, and thank you for participating today.